Brothers and sisters, today is Palm Sunday, and we begin the Holy Week, the holiest of all weeks in the world, in the life of the church. The week that we celebrate Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection. The Saturday of the 5th week of Lent every year, the gospel will always end in verse 56 of John's Gospel, chapter 11. And there, in verse 56, when the Passover had come, and because the Jews had made up their mind to arrest Jesus, to make him suffer and to die, people were saying, what do you think? So if you were at Mass yesterday, that's the last thing you will hear from the Gospel of, in the morning of, the Gospel of yesterday. What do you think? Do you think he's going to come to the festival or not? And today, Palm Sunday, Jesus makes it clear that he wasn't running away from suffering. He went to the temple. He went to Jerusalem. He came to the festival, but not hiding. He wasn't afraid. He rode on a donkey. On Palm Sundays, for the so many years I've been a priest, I've loved to preach, not on the passion narrative, but on the gospel that we read before the procession into the church. And what did Jesus do when the disciples asked him? He gave an instruction: go into the city to so and so place. You will find a donkey that is tied. Untie it and bring it to me. If the owner asks you what you are doing, say to the owner, the master needs it, and he will bring it back. It is so significant, my brothers and sisters, that Jesus rode on a donkey. He wasn't just trying to let people know that he came to the festival and to present himself for suffering. But the donkey was also very symbolic. The donkey is a burden bearer. And Jesus rode on this donkey to enter Jerusalem to come and bear our burden. The donkey is a humble animal, very humble. Wherever you take the donkey, it follows you. The donkey walked hard, was ready to be used. So the donkey was very symbolic. Jesus, though he was in the form of God, as we had in the second reading of today, letter to the Philippians chapter 2, verse 6, he emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, riding on a donkey. The other kings of the earth will ride on horses, but he rode on a donkey, symbolizing who he is, the King of peace, the humble king. That's who he is, who was coming to take away the sins of the world. And my dear brothers and my dear sisters, when he said the master needs it, every time I think about it, it says a lot to me. The use of the term, the master, implies the owner of he who owned the donkey, and the owner of the donkey. And so, even though he was king, even though he was in the form of God, even though he was the master, most of the things Jesus did while on earth, he used people. He was borrowing. Let me use the word borrowing. As the master and king, he needed to borrow a donkey to get to Jerusalem. He could have gone to Jerusalem, but he wanted to teach us something. All his life, from his birth to his death, he was borrowing. He borrowed the womb of Mary. He borrowed their foster father, Joseph. He borrowed where he was giving birth to, in a manger. He borrowed the home of animals. He borrowed it. When it was time for him to feed the 5,000, he borrowed from a small kid who had the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He borrowed the boat of Peter. He borrowed Peter's boat to be able to be there, to stand there to preach. He had nowhere to stand to preach. He had to borrow a boat. He borrowed a grave. Where he was buried was a borrowed grave. Most of the things Jesus did at different times, he had to use people. And so, Lenten season, my dear brothers and my dear sisters, as we gradually come to the end of it, it's not just a time for us to reconcile with Jesus. It's not just a time to get back into the love of God. That's one. But it's also a time for us to be who he has made us to be. When we reconcile with him and we become who he has made us to be, he is able to use us. He borrows you and I. The master needs it. He is your master. He is my master. He is the master of the world. He is the master of everything I have. The master of my intelligence, the master of my money, the master of my time, the master of my health, the master of my wealth, the master of my strength. He owns all these things. And he calls all of us to allow him to use these things that he has given to us. That is one of the essence of Lenten season. When we become who he has made of us, who he wants us to be, by all these Lenten activities and practices that we have gone through, or we are still going through, then we allow him to use us. It doesn't mean he needs us as strictly speaking, but he gives us the privilege and the wonderful blessing of being used by him to do so many things in the world. And I wish and pray that all of us who have participated in these Lenten activities, Lenten observances, and we are still going on, will be able to ask Jesus to use us. I am yours. Do with me whatever you will. I am yours. Borrow me. Take me. Use me. He is the master. Your master, my master, Lord and God. I love Don Moen when he played the music. I have 2 hands, 1 life, 1 love to offer you. 2 hands, 1 life, that's what I give to you.